The most complicated villain this show ever wrote dies at the bottom of a hole, screaming while a rattlesnake bites him over and over again. That is not the end of Nate Jacobs. Not a reckoning, not a confrontation, not one honest scene with the father who built him. A snake, a pit, and a grown man screaming for someone who cannot hear him. I laughed, then I felt bad for laughing, then I got angry because I remembered who this character used to be, and I realized the show did not kill Nate Jacobs in that hole. He was already dead weeks earlier, and the snake scene was just cleaning up Sam Levinson's mess. So let me tell you how we got here. I want to be clear about one thing before the knives come out. Season 1 and Season 2, Nate Jacobs was the best villain this show ever made, and it is not particularly close. Here's the proof. Go back to the flashbacks of Nate as a kid finding his father's pornography, and an entire hidden collection, meticulously organized, cataloging a version of Cal Jacobs that could not exist in the same house as the man at the dinner table. A child is handed the single most destabilizing secret a boy can find out about his father, and he has no language for it. No one to tell, nowhere to put it. Entertainment Weekly called Nate one of the most chilling antagonists on television, and the reason is right there in that discovery. His whole personality is a wall he built in front of that tape. That is a villain. You could write a full page about Season 2 Nate and never touch the same idea twice. He is the star quarterback who moves through his town as if he is invisible, and almost nobody sees the malice in him except a couple of adults who clock it instantly and get ignored. He does not lash out at random. He architects people. He catfishes Jules with a fake profile to extract images he can hold over her. He beats a man half to death and calmly frames him for it. He surveils Maddie and squeezes her throat, and eventually points a gun into the middle of his own family's mess to control the fallout. Every horrifying thing he does traces cleanly back to that hidden tape and the hollow, terrified masculinity his father modeled for him. Season 1 and 2, Nate was built carefully. Nate inherited shame with a varsity jacket on. Cal spent his whole life performing a perfect man to bury who he actually was. And Nate took that performance and radicalized it, turned his father's private repression into public violence, and punished everyone around him for the softness he was terrified of finding in himself. That is a character you can analyze for 3 hours and not run dry, which is exactly what makes Season 3 so insulting. Sam Levinson, the creator and sole writer of this show, understood Nate Jacobs completely. He wrote the tapes, he wrote the invisibility, he built the most legible monster on the network, and then handed a final season to pay all of that off. He stopped writing the character and started writing the character's punishment, and he confused the two things for the entire season. There's a difference between a story and a beating, and Euphoria spent its last season betting you would not notice which one it was giving you. Now I have to be fair, because the wild part is that the premise underneath Season 3, Nate is good. It might be the best idea the season had. Watch what they set up. Nate takes over his dead father's business and discovers that being terrified in a high school hallway means nothing in a room full of grown men who do not care how good he looked at prom. The kid whose entire power was control finds himself, for the first time in his life, powerless. He sinks everything into an expensive end-of-life facility, a retirement village he thinks prints money because the clients keep dying, which is real, unsettling glimpse into how this guy's brain works. Then the construction stalls over a patch of protected endangered flowers. He cannot swindle the investors fast enough, and he borrows $500,000 from a loan shark named Naz. That is the correct story. That is Nate's exact flaws. The arrogance, the certainty that he is the smartest person in every room, finally meeting a world that will not flinch. He even starts ponziing his own neighbors, pulling their kids' college funds into a project he cannot deliver. And honestly, that version of the season, Nate Jacobs quietly running a pyramid scheme in a cul-de-sac, is one I would have watched happily. The bones are there. The man who manipulated a whole town is now cornered by adults who manipulated for a living. And then Levinson looks at that setup, that beautiful consequence machine he just built, and decides what this actually needs is for Nate to get his toe ripped off. Because here's where it curdles. The show had two roads out of that premise. Road 1 is consequence, where Nate's choices keep closing the door on him until he has nowhere left to stand, the way a good strategy tightens. Road 2 is karma, where the writer simply starts hurting him and expects the pain to feel like justice. Euphoria floors it down Road 2 and never looks back. So the wedding blows up. Naz shows up to the reception and sees his money paying for lobster and caviar. The curated image collapses. Cassie leaves, and all of that is fine. All of that is earned. But instead of letting the collapse be the point, Levinson pivots to a torture reel. Nate gets the money beaten out of him. His debt somehow doubles to $1 million as if the loan shark is charging interest by the punch. He gets a toe reattached and then loses it again. Loses a finger, gets kidnapped, gets buried alive in a straight lift from Kill Bill, except the movie had a decency to let the bride dig herself out. Nate just screams in the box. His brother comes looking. Nate screams a half-second too late. The banging draws a rattlesnake down into the hole, and the most psychologically intricate character the show ever produced exits the series by being bitten to death by a reptile while yelling. Congratulations to Sam Levinson for turning his best villain into a Looney Tunes coyote and calling it a reckoning. And notice what happened to Nate in all of it. He stopped doing things. Go back and count. For the entire second half of the season, almost nothing Nate does is a choice. Things happen to him. He is late on a payment. He gets hurt. He is home. He gets hurt. The man whose entire identity was control has been reduced to a slob eating and drinking on a couch, waiting for the next scene to arrive and injure him. A manipulator with no one left to manipulate is a fascinating idea. A manipulator the writer just kicks down the stairs for 6 episodes is a screensaver. That is why the death cannot hit the way the show wants it to. By the time the snake shows up, there is no Nate Jacobs left in the frame for it to happen to. The psychology is gone. The plotting is gone. The terrifying stillness is gone. You are not watching a villain get his ending. You are watching a writer take out the trash and score it like an opera. Now let me show you it did not have to be this way, because another show took this exact man and treated his downfall like a story instead of a punishment. Breaking Bad is about Walter White, a proud man drowning in the feeling that the world made him small, who builds an entire second self to feel powerful again. Heisenberg is a performance, the hat, the name, and the myth. The same way Nate's whole Golden Boy front is a performance sketched over a scared kid. Same wound, wounded masculinity. Terror of being nothing, a man who would rather burn the world than be seen as weak. The difference is what the writers do with the fall. Every single catastrophe in Breaking Bad is something Walter chooses. He turns down the money that would fix everything. He lets Jane die. He poisons a child. He gets Hank killed by his own hand's chain of decisions. When Walter finally bleeds out on that lab floor, it is not the universe punishing him. It is the exact shape of every choice he made, arriving all at once. Vince Gilligan built a man who destroys himself and never once had to send an animal to finish the job. That is the season Nate deserved. A man whose need for control detonates his own life, brick by brick, choice by choice, until the powerlessness he spent his whole life outrunning finally swallows him. Instead, Levinson gave him a snake because a snake is faster to write than a soul. And to be clear, Jacob Elordi is not the problem here. Elordi is the only reason any of this still stings. He spends the whole season playing the coiled, humiliated animal underneath, the panic in the jaw, the dead eyes doing math, the little boy still standing in front of that tape even when the script has stopped handing him a single interior thought to work with. The performance keeps insisting there is a person in there long after the writing gave up looking. He is acting a tragedy inside a cartoon, and the cartoon keeps winning. If you have ever watched a show take a character you spent years trying to understand and turn him into a chew toy, subscribe, because this whole channel is just me rewatching this stuff so you don't have to relive it alone. Because this is the move Levinson keeps making. This is the same writer whose final season found time for animal feces and Tarantino homages and elaborate set pieces suffering, but could not find 20 minutes to sit inside the head of the villain he spent 2 seasons perfecting. The instinct is always the spectacle. Point the expensive camera at the pain, hold the shot, and hopes the audience mistakes intensity for meaning. He is not a writer who failed to understand Nate. He is a writer who understood Nate exactly and decided a buried alive gag would pop harder than a psychology ever would. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the charge is this. A show wrote one of the most complete villains in television history, a boy assembled entirely out of his father's shame, and it proved across 2 seasons that it knew precisely how he worked. Then handed a final season and a premise strong enough to finish him honestly. It chose to strip out the character and batter the body for laughs until a snake could carry the corpse off stage. They did not lose Nate Jacobs. They understood him, and they decided he was funny or broken. The state rests. Sam, let me talk to you directly, like you were sitting across the table from me. You wrote the tapes. You wrote the child finding out who his father really was and having nowhere to put it. And you built an entire monster on that one unbearable secret. And it worked. It worked so well that people made hours of video trying to explain it. So I know you can see him. I know you understand that Nate Jacobs was never a bully. He was inherited shame in a Letterman jacket, a kid performing a father who was performing a man. And then you got your final season, The one place you could have closed that loop, and you spent it ripping off his toes. You gave him a real story. A control freak losing control in a world that finally scared him, and then you got bored of the story and reached for a shovel and a snake. You did not ruin Nate because you stopped understanding him, Sam. You ruined him because you understood him perfectly, and you decided the boy in front of the tape was worth more to you screaming in a hole than sitting in a chair telling the truth one last time. Jacob Elordi spent a whole season playing a soul you stopped writing. That was never Nate's ending, it was yours.